there's a lot of groups that talk about gamification, and it's kind of a pet peeve of mine because I hear it a lot, but usually the people that are using it use it like it's a button. You click gamification, and all of a sudden everything works better. Especially in the VR market. I'm a VR game developer, and because of certain stats that come with VR, people assume that just because you put it in VR, it already gamifies things and it makes things a lot better. And so just adding homework to VR would improve homework. And that's not the case. And so we're going to talk a lot about that. So let's start with what is the goal? What with every gamification aspect, you are gamifying something because you want a certain person, audience, to engage with the product. If they feel like it's a game, it feels fun, and you lose track of time, you don't feel like it's homework or it's tedious. That is part of the drive behind gamification, is that you can make something fun and you can learn at the same time. Who are you selling to? So the first question, and this doesn't go very deep, but who are you selling to? Are you selling to a school, a specific business, or are you selling directly to the consumer? Like for example, if you want to sell to the hospital, some features, some apps, some software, are you selling to directly to nurses or doctors, or are you selling to the hospitals, or both? And then you have to take into account, if you're selling to hospitals, what do they care about? If you're selling to nurses or doctors, what do they care about? And it's the same for anything. Education. Are you selling to schools, or are you going to sell straight to the students? Because each one is different. Schools have different kind of money, and students have their own money. Where are you drawing money from, to understand that, and then to also understand what do they care about? Because the students care differently about their own success rather than schools. Schools might care more about results from a bunch of students. So that determines how you're going to go about your product and choosing your target audience. So let's go to, what is your goal? Now that you know who you're selling to, or you have an idea, you love art or museums, and you want to improve the museum experience, or you want to improve the nursing program at a university. So what is the goal? What are you trying to accomplish? Oftentimes you're selling to schools, and if you're selling something specific, or let's say you want to sell to a construction company or a franchise, it's like, what is it that they care about? So if they care about cutting cost, then that's something you have to look into. So let's do that. Let's say food franchise. Okay, let's say that. Okay, so let's say you wanna. Yeah, let's say you're gonna do food franchise. Okay, and in there you're gonna have training new employees. So what I've seen in food franchise is that training new employees usually has a cost. So maybe the goal is to reduce training cost. And usually these happens, the biggest training cost is when a new franchise opens. Because when you are training just one person, you're just breaking in, and you just put him on the line, and the other people, there's one person that can train them. But if you can open up a franchise and sell this to, every time a franchise opens, you say you have this app that helps you. Okay, so how can, let's say, VR? Because I had someone that came up with that and said, "Oh, this will be great for training people in the food industry, training in VR." Okay, so let's talk about it, and then we're gonna dive more into this training in VR and how can VR improve the food franchise. And I want to go over this as a real scenario so that you understand how these principles apply. So we're gonna go back to this and we're gonna talk about it and use it with the food franchise. So what's the hypothesis? And have there been previous attempts? As previous attempts, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that I've seen someone did a McDonald's app, or maybe for ordering, food distribution. If you've seen the Founders movie, where they go over and they're trying to figure out how to do the planning to do the most efficient food distribution. So like how to map out the kitchen and the serving area so it's optimized. And they had to do that with drawing. And maybe VR would be a good place to do that, but it would take a long time to go back and forth. And drawing with papers and the physical space is actually much better than VR, because in VR you actually don't get that, and you would have to do it in multiplayer game. So it's a lot more difficult than it appears. And so the cost, I don't think it's worth it. Whereas you can just lay out papers and you can measure everything in real life, and the cost is very minimal. Okay, so hypothesis. The hypothesis is that we can train new employees in VR, and it will be more effective than training them in real life. Why? Because they don't have to go to work. Like they could do it at home with a VR headset. You ship them a VR headset with the software or the app installed and say, get trained on this. Finish the course and come back, and you'll be ready. You'll gone through all the training. And so that saves you because no one has to talk to them or teach them, right? Like the cost of paying a manager to train them. And if you do it for opening a restaurant, you save hundreds of hours because they don't all have to be there. And you can say, okay, go through this training. If you finish this training, you can come and you can you can go through the test, and then we'll see if we can hire you. So instead of like hiring them, this could be a test to prep them for the initial thing. So you don't have to pay them for a training if you want it to be cheap. Um, so that's an option. And the franchise could use it however they want. Okay, are there previous attempts? Maybe. If you really want to research what's been done before in other platforms, talk to other franchise, especially if you have a specific franchise in mind. What did they do right? What did they do wrong? That's pretty straightforward, but you have to find the research if it's been done before. And oftentimes you'll say, I can't find anything, it hasn't been done before. But maybe we're going to prepare for this because sometimes investors and franchises probably have looked into it, but never found something that worked. Maybe. So there might be a reason why no one's done it before because it might not be a good idea. Okay, so we'll go into the hypothesis. How will you know if it's working, right? And platform options, like the cost, for example, VR, what's the cost? It's $250 per headset. So you're gonna have, if you need to train people, you're gonna have headsets. Are they gonna pick it up? Are you gonna ship it to them? They have to be, eventually they're gonna work in there. So it's just like, this is taking down the cost of actually physically training them. So do the cost outweigh the price? Okay, and then we're going to talk more about that. So for example, okay, let's say this is from Hormozy, the Hormozy's equation of value. Like, so this is where the product gives you value, right? You have to understand the target audience, who you're selling to. Like in this scenario, the food industry franchise. Let's say McDonald's for the sake. McDonald's sandwich. It could be anything. Let's say McDonald's or Panda Express. So dream outcome. What's the dream outcome? You give them the headset, and within a day, they know everything. Either a day or how long does it take to train a person? Usually, it's like a week of training, and you have to go through, and they have to do a lot. And so, what if this could shave off a week? So that's decreasing the time it takes to accomplish, right? The effort, the sacrifice. It also cuts down on how many people, like the sacrifice of a manager or a trainer to train them. Even if they're cheap, you're having someone else. It's double because first of all, they're not working towards making food or whatever they need to do. They are working on that person. So that's a negative. And then that person that's training is getting paid. And so you're losing money and you're losing productivity because that person's efforts and time is going towards this training. And so instead, you have the cost of the headset, $250. And every time someone trains on that, you're adding value. Because now, let's say one headset can train you one person a week, right? Or maybe as soon as they're done, you have someone else. And so if you have two headsets, now you're saving time and you can train two people every week if you need it. Maybe at the beginning to launch a new facility, you might need 10 headsets, and you can say you have to complete this training within 2 days and come back to finish the assessment. And then that way you have more capital per headset, right? So that you're getting more out of your headsets. That's the cost. And then how likely are they to achieve what you want, which is to be ready to work, and how much knowledge do they retain? So two things that you have to worry about is, do they learn what they need to learn, and do they do it efficiently? So here's where it comes. You need to dive deep into understanding what they need to learn, because oftentimes I see a lot of CEOs and with this idea, oh, you can train them to do this and that, and they'll be ready. The problem is that when you're in this specific industry, food, you need to handle hot items. You're under pressure. It's hot. You're with other people. You have to learn to communicate. There's a lot of things that can't be replicated on the headset. The heat, having the work clothes, shoes that make sure it's not slippery. You're on the floor. People are talking. People are trying to communicate. You have to look at the screen, and people are waiting for you, and you have to hurry. That pressure is not on the headset. You could replicate it, but again, that's developing cost for you. And so now you have to say, well, are we willing to do that? And what's the cost for that? And so my answer would be, you don't need to do that. So what you would do is you say, this doesn't train everything, but it removes all the fluff that you don't need to talk about. So, for example, where are things located? Like, where are the fries? Where are the burgers? How long does it take? Flipping, practicing with the timer and getting things in order and in time. And so the structure, what you do when you clock in, where do you clock in? And every franchise is a little bit different. So that's the other problem. Usually when they do the franchise, they'll have a kitchen area and a thing, and a hall, a freezer, walk-in freezer, and they'll have different things, and they're all at different places. And sometimes they look a little bit different. So each franchise is different because it depends on the slot that they attain or they get. They don't build the thing from the ground up. And sometimes they do build it from the ground up and they have them all the same. But usually as time goes on, they improve on the design and it changes. So maybe you need to compartmentalize the tasks, right? Like let's say you're doing food prep and the kitchen might not be in the same location, but it looks the same or similar. And so the idea is to, okay, this app or this game will help you learn where things are at or how to use different things. So when you're doing burgers, this is what you need to learn. You need to find where this is, where the bread, the burger, the cheese, whatever it is, how long it takes. When you do the fries, how long, where, what. And so you're not going to get everything perfect. You already know that, but you're going to save them time because they're going to practice, and they're going to be able to repeat without wasting food because they don't have to wait. Because usually what happens in food industry, you have an opening week where the people that are training, or like a day where you give food for free or something, and then that gives people the ability to practice making the food because you need clients to do the work. And so this saves costs because you don't have to throw away food or you don't have to wait till people buy it to make it. And so you can train them 80% of the way there. They don't know about the heat, the conditions, and so all that stuff is okay. But you have to understand that they're not going to get everything. And then you say, okay, this is going to save you. How long does it usually take you? You have to talk to them. You have to communicate with and say, okay, this is how long it takes. This is how long it saves. Okay, so out of the week, we cut down 4 days. Now you only have to bring them in for a final assessment. It's like, okay, now they'll come in and they'll say, well, for the burgers, I need to know where the bread is, where the hamburgers is. When I'm done, I need to clean. You can learn tips about where to clean and where people miss cleaning. Usually in specific spots that people don't clean, because sometimes people are not good at cleaning everywhere and they miss spots. That's a good thing that you can train in the app. So once you have employees that are trained 80%, and now they just need to be acquainted with the franchise in that specific location where things are at, and you have a more productive employee. They know what to expect, but you preface that there's things that they don't know about. They need to understand that there's probably things that are hot. They have to communicate that someone's moving behind them, or someone's here, or that there's an order, and they have to practice that. And so you're not eliminating everything. You have to be realistic, but you can do this, and you can save costs. So the value of your product is the likelihood of achieving. You have to increase that dream outcome, or the likelihood of your likelihood of achievement. So that means how likely are they to be efficient in working, and then decrease the time it takes to accomplish. When they are on their own time, and if they are serious about the job, they will use it to be effective. And that's where the gamification comes into play, because the developer can do a stat system to track how many hours they spent on it, how many times they completed the assignments, and they can create a measurement and say, based on and add features so that employees can feel good about their how good they are, and the employer can then be like, okay, this guy practiced 80 hours, this guy practiced 2 hours, right? And so they can see the efforts without having to spend a lot of time, and a person, they can do it at home. And so that is huge, and it does save time and effort and sacrifice. And it's only $250. Okay, so that is how you kind of measure and put things into perspective. Then you have to think about, is it appealing to the target audience? In this scenario, is it appealing to to who you're selling to? The food industry, let's say McDonald's, like they already know how to train people. They already have a thing. Why would they change what they already know? You can talk to them and say, how much does it cost you? And then like, we want to make it better. Can we talk about this? And it depends. But usually companies are willing to talk about cutting cost. And so this is something that if you can prove, you can say, we'd like to prove it. I know I'm confident in our skills, and we can do that. And you can start with a mom and pop shop, or you can start with a big franchise, but so you just start contacting all franchises until you find someone that's willing to do it, because you have to develop their routine, right? So like if I do McDonald's, it's not going to transfer over to Panda Express. So you're going to have to first try to contact a bunch of franchises and see which one actually wants to work with you. Because then you can say, okay, well, can we do this? And are you willing to try it, right? And do a contract. And you might lose money because no one's paying for it. But if you do a contract and you figure out how to do it right, maybe you find investors to do it. You have a company, you find investment, you get it done, and then that company benefits. Now they're a proven concept, right? Because that's what you want to do, is you want to get it into people's hands and actually figure it out. And so the other thing is, as you do this, you got to track. It's like, is this actually fulfilling their expectations or improving what they thought? Is it adding value to them? And then is this helping the people that are looking for jobs, right? Like are they willing to do this work instead of going literally in? Do they prefer it? Is it easier? Is it faster? Is it a win-win situation for both the franchise and the employee? Because this could be a win for all of them. And so as you find funding and actually get this done, you have stats that back up your claim. But all this, I've never seen this happen in usually, because what happens is people throw out numbers and try to find funding, and then they do something and it doesn't sell because they're missing these points. And no one wants to do the hard work. They think that because they just put things in, it works. And so that's why it's important to know, okay, what are the platform options? Like a mobile app, can a mobile app help you? And VR has a specific way of working. And it's the same with iPad, iPhones, all these new technologies, AR. You can't just say gamification and you can't just say VR or AR or mobile. Like, you have to understand the platform that you're building for and what it offers, and how are you using the unique aspects of that platform to get the results you want, or are you just saying things for the sake of doing a VR project or an AR project, right? Or the Vision Pro or whatever it is. So, like, especially now with technology improving and AI, the reason why AI is so popular is because it meets a demand. If AI is not helping me with the project that I need, or it's not adding value, I'm not going to use it. And so people just quit using it. And so the AIs that work and are useful get used. And that's why AI is taking over so much, because it's working. It's actually producing results. And so if we use this technology that we have to actually create value, the items will sell themselves. So I hope this enlightens people on how to gamify, because I hear that word a lot and none of this is ever brought up. It's usually, oh, this is the stats, this is usually what happens. And so by default or by association, things will happen for you. And then they go out and try to sell it and no one believes them, because of all this information that needs to happen, or this communication that needs to happen to get things right and to actually succeed. So I don't want to have anything left unsaid, and I want to make sure that I'm clear with some of these things so that you understand all the way from beginning to end how this would go or play out in an ideal scenario. And you don't always get the best; you only have one chance to make a first impression. And so these educational things are hard. Uh, Gamification is hard, especially if you're trying to get results. That's why not many people do it, because it's hard work and you might fail. It's not guaranteed, because you have to make sure that you talk to the right people, or that the people pay attention, or they care. And it's difficult. I've been there. I've been in scenarios where we pitching ideas and I wasn't in charge of making all these decisions. All I could do is develop the idea. Um, and so here's how I would do it. Okay. You've made the product. Now you have to prove that it works. Create the stats that you want. For example, a lot of people say VR is better because X, Y, and Z. Okay, then prove it. Like, do it and put people. So in this case, we're training for McDonald's and in VR versus in real life, IRL. Okay. Can it be done? And that's what you have to prove. You have to prove it with stats. Like, and then you have in here, like, there's a gap that you have to bridge between these guys that are in training, and how long the gap. How long? So how long is the gap, and what does it take? The smaller that gap is, the better. But that's not all, because then you have to say, like, you have to find the results. The results. So what are you going to measure? Like competence. That's one. But then there's also how excited are they to work? Maybe uh, they were really happy that they got to try VR, right? And it was a really cool concept. Maybe they're excited to go to work now because the company is like doing things that are next generation stuff. Um, What are their thoughts? Like, and then how are they? How are managers happier, right? Like managers can have an input on what's going on, like the type of employees, like are these better than the employees real life. Sometimes in real life might help also, because as you're learning you get to know the people you're working with. So that's one issue that VR doesn't fix, unless you make it really but then it defeats the purpose, right? Like, um so maybe you do a multiplayer game and they have fun while in VR, right, and messing around. But then that might not be what you want, and it can change. And so you have to take into account these things with VR. What can VR gain, and what might you need to bridge? What might you have to do to bridge the gap? Uh, Co-workers might not know each other because they all got trained by VR, and now they don't know each other. But they don't need to know each other to work, right? But it does help with the environment. But you can do something different for that. And this is specifically for training. Are these people ready to work? um, and how valuable is this to other things? You might even find out other things as you observe people. But you have to observe, you have to track, you keep this into perspective. You have to know that, like, you have to compare and figure out, and you might have to adjust and pivot on some things. But it's crucial that you do this, because this is where you find out the cost. Like, how much does this save them, and how much can we charge for it? Because now you have to charge for the servers, because you have to create the 3D space for the franchise. And then now the only people that you can sell to is that franchise, so you have to sign an NDA of some sort, and then create that. And then now you can go to other franchises and say, well, it costs us this. And the main thing with this is that it's enticing to a franchise because you can replicate the training process, and it doesn't have to be the specific build. It's just the specific things that they have to learn. And that is the same across every franchise. Every McDonald's have a Happy Meal. And then maybe there's some countries, or like countries is a whole different ballgame. But within each state, maybe they have a special menu or something. But that is the start, right? Like, then you have the franchise, and then you go to other franchises and say, we've done this for McDonald's, and they save X amount of money. Now it's easier to sell to other franchises because they are doing it, and it's their competitors. And that's where, like, the NDA can get very conflicted if you're not allowed to sell to other people. But then they can pay a premium for it if they don't want to have competition, and we can't release the stats to other people, and that's okay. So there's things that you can negotiate, but you have to understand the cost, the value of the stats that you have, and the partnership that you're doing. There's a lot of things involved with gamification when it comes to trying to sell a product and trying to actually help people. And it's different for everything that you want to do. School is completely different. Museums, all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of possibilities, but you have to be aware of what you're doing. And the main thing is you you got to learn how to do the hard work and do it right. So the next time you hear the word gamification, think about this. Are you really passionate about what you're doing and what you want to accomplish? Are you willing to do the homework? If you have an idea or a thought, comment below. What are your thoughts? What did I miss? Is there something that I did not talk about? Is there something that you feel you need help with? Are you trying to gamify something and you're having a hard time coming up with the game design to make it fun or to make it achievable? Let's talk about it. I love talking about game design and brainstorming with you. And so comment below. And if you like this information, please give a thumbs up, like the video, subscribe to the channel to learn more. And I know that you can be effective in designing a gamification aspect in the platform of your choice for a specific thing, whether it's education, in the industry, a franchise, something that you're trying to improve. I know it can be done. A lot of apps and softwares success come from this, from adding value to people, to giving value to communities. Games are easier to sell because it's just entertainment. But you can educate, you can improve people's life if you do these things right. And so I'm very passionate about education. A lot of times my pet peeve is when gamification is used in a very simple, as if it's easy, as it's just like press the gamification button and your problems are solved. They're not. There has to be value and it has to be designed. And that's why I make these videos, so that people can start being successful with their games or their educational videos, apps, software, whatever it is. It all starts with thinking about the people you're trying to influence and help out.